Have you ever had a money or career question you really wanted to ask, but didn't know who to go to or just felt uncomfortable even bringing it up? You're not alone. Talking about money can feel intimidating, even scary. And that's exactly what I'm trying to change. That's why I created a free virtual coffee chat, a casual, no pressure 20-minute conversation where you can bring one thing you're wrestling with and we'll talk it through. No judgment, no jargon, no sales pitch, just clarity, ease, and a real answer from someone who gets it. If you've got something on your mind, don't sit in the confusion. Book a spot at limitfreelife.com and let's sip and sort it out. Hey there, and welcome to Money and You. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. My search for more fulfilling work led me to career and business coaching, where I stumbled upon a game-changing discovery. Money issues often start with our mindset and habits. You see, our relationship with money is the key to overcoming those frustrating financial obstacles. As an entrepreneur, coach, and problem solver, I'm passionate about helping you create a great relationship with money. Because, turns out, that's the foundation for a limit-free life. Each week on Money and You, I speak with amazing guests about all things money, mindset, practical tips, and everything in between. We're here to give you new insights, education, and empowerment so money can be one of your favorite relationships. So join us for some lively conversations and let's transform your financial life together. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Money and You Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and I am thrilled about today's show. There's a guest coming on the show who I had such a fabulous conversation with, walking up and down in a parking lot, and I just have been looking forward to having her on for the longest time. And she wrote a book called Your Money Has Feelings, which I in particular loved because when I'm working with clients, one of the exercises I take them through is writing a letter to their money. And then, and you can do this is very fun, write a letter to your money, but then have your money write a letter back to you. And so your money has feelings. You don't know it has feelings until you do that. And then you realize what your money has to say to you. And so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our guest because she is so knowledgeable about all of this, and you're going to love her. So money isn't just numbers. It's deeply emotional, and most of us carry invisible money wounds from our upbringing, relationships, or life setbacks. Shannon Bryan, CFP, has spent over 3 decades behind closed doors helping people unpack those stories. She's the author of the upcoming, well, not upcoming anymore, the book Your Money Has Feelings. And she's here to show you that money behavior isn't about spreadsheets. It's about self-worth, healing, and values. Shannon helps people break patterns, shift mindsets, and finally feel at peace with their money. So Shannon, welcome.
Well, hello, Michelle. I'm excited to be here because our conversation was very rich, and I've really enjoyed that time just privately with you. And I look forward to having a conversation where hopefully others will benefit from both of our interaction because we're very much aligned.
Yeah, and I haven't not forgotten that conversation either. It was so good. And you know, one thing that I love, and that you actually take to the next level, is you understand the things that I've come to understand about people's relationships with money, their values around money, their emotional, ups and downs around money. But you're also a wealth planner and advisor, and so you can actually, look that far ahead for them as well. So why don't you tell us, because not all wealth advisors understand these things like you do. So how did that come about?
As a coach, you understand that as you start to try to help people have a healthy relationship with their money, you learn very quickly that there's certain beliefs that we carry, and I call it scar tissue, things that we've had that have happened in our lives that impact our reaction or reaction to money. And so I am sure that you've seen it in your coaching, but for me personally, especially as a woman, I started in financial planning 30 plus years ago. And in the beginning, it was very much the go-go 90s. It was buy and sell stock. Everything was about being a broker. And it just didn't feel right with me, but that's what it was. And I was one of the few girls on the floor. And so I started working with people on their money and started to realize very quickly that even if people had great wealth and money, enough money to last their lifetime, didn't always mean that they enjoyed it or they were in alignment with it from a values perspective. So I started exploring the behavior side of money early on. I had a couple very impactful instances where people had some life-changing things happen that made me realize that it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the investments. And that's the easy part. People are the tough part, not the money.
Yeah, I love that. And the thing that not everybody does in your industry is get to know the people. I mean, there's a lot of formula and not as much getting to know the people. And so I think that's where it becomes really interesting too. So, that's the best part, really, if you're up for it. So, what you did a great TED Talk, by the way, on this topic. Can you tell us the name of it? Because I'm not remembering the name.
It's financial. Gosh, what exactly was the financial Scottish? It's interesting. You do a TEDx talk. I did a TEDx talk here in my city, and then they title it afterwards. But basically, I think the title they ended up putting up on it was "Healing Your Financial Scar Tissue or Your Financial Trauma or Wounds." It's under Shan Ryan CFP on YouTube. You can find it, and then you can see what the title is. And shame on me for not remembering, but it was my story of starting to identify in my practice through several client reflections of how I started to see this scar tissue and how it changed my interaction with people.
Yeah, and I'll find the TED Talk and put it in the show notes. But thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's okay. I should remember.
But so yeah, let's just talk about that scar tissue. So I love the term because we can all actually feel it, which is the whole thing. There are feelings around money, and people don't realize that that's driving their behavior. And so, what can you give us a few examples of what you're talking about with the scar tissue?
So when I was working with clients early on, and I would ask questions, what's most important to you about your money? What are you hoping to accomplish? And I started getting answers that I noticed were what I would say are expected answers. Well, I want to retire. I want to educate my kids. Oh, I can't buy that. And I heard a lot of shoulds and can'ts. And I am a person who asks a lot of questions. I kept asking a question to help me understand why you can't or why you should be doing this. And it started to emerge that people's life experiences, childhood memories, not having cool clothes or cool shoes to fit in because your parents couldn't afford them, or being hungry, watching your parents go through a divorce and use money as a weapon, losing your first job, having the expectation that, gosh, I'm 25, 27, I've got my degree and I'm out here working. Why can't I afford a house yet? There's so many things that happen through this process of maturing, not only as professionals and people in the work world, but also as financial people, that we have disappointments. And sometimes those disappointments leave very deep wounds. And when the wound heals, you forget about it. I would say scar tissue remains. And what I mean by scar tissue is often habits of how you think about money. I can't do that. I'll never have enough. I should do that. That's the scar tissue. Those are the things that we do on repeat, the habits, usually born out of an experience that we've had that we may not even be consciously aware of any longer, and it limits our financial happiness.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer, and it's something we don't spend enough time looking at and thinking about. And sometimes it's very much reflected in how people speak about themselves. I was at the grocery store the other day and I was talking to the checker, and he was a sweet guy, and we had something in common that led to him telling me about how he bought his house and how amazing it was that he had this opportunity because something bad had happened to the previous owner or something, and he got this deal. And he just kept saying, I could have never bought a house. I mean, I'm so fortunate that this happened. It could never happen again. There was all this stuff. I was just fascinated because, I mean, there was nothing that he was saying that was even reminding him it was hard, but I did it. Like, I have the house. So where could I go from here? Instead, it was like, oh my gosh, I caught that opportunity and I'll never get another one. And I just thought, this is so fascinating to me, the way he's thinking.
Yes, and it's very common. And I sometimes I don't think we even realize some of the language we use on repeat and how negative it is. I There was a statistics I heard once that was, we have a billion thoughts a day and most of them are negative. And it's usually we're telling ourselves something over and over. And we run on these tracks. We will, tell ourselves that the pimple that popped up on our face is the worst thing that happened. We're going to think about that pimple 10 hours a day and until it goes away. And oh my gosh, the pimple ruined my life today. And that's a very simple example of something that we focus on and then we ruminate on it. And it happens with many as well. We find that that house was, never on his bingo card. He wasn't going to be able to afford a house. So he must have just gotten lucky to get into it. Never the hard work or I can do this. The opportunities come. And not to get too woo-woo, but I truly think that our thoughts stop a lot of our abundance because we expect the worst. And by expecting the worst or not thinking that we're worthy of what other people have or staying in the I could never, we really limit what we can do. And I find that people find what they're looking for. If you're looking for failure, it's going to show up.
Oh, I mean, I love woo woo, and I love it when somebody like you brings it up because, I think it gives it some more legitimacy because you work in a very sort of practical arena.
Yeah.
But I can't, the more I the more I learn, the more I read, the older I get, the more I'm absolutely convinced that your thoughts are absolutely crucial. And whatever you've had in your earlier life, your thoughts are still yours to change. And recognizing that we're conditioned or we have the scar tissue or we heard these things in the past does not mean you have to continue to think that way.
Yeah.
Even if
And
you don't see the evidence of it, sometimes we have to trust and have a little faith in some new thoughts.
often we have to trust and have a little bit of faith, but you know this as a coach very, very well. Every tool, there's not a lot of new things out there. You can Google anything that you want on finances, how to invest, how to become financially successful, how to build a cash reserve and pay off your debt, and how to do all of these things. So the tools are out there, and yet we're living in a society that still reports very low financial literacy levels, meaning how money works in the world. We don't want to look at it. We'd rather do anything else than think about or focus on our money. And then when things don't go our way financially, well, I'll never get that. What I find often is this ladder of we have negative thoughts around money that are stemming from a place in our life. And I named my book, Your Money Has Feelings. We know money is just paper. It doesn't have feelings. We have feelings about money. And those reactions to money many times are so deeply buried that, again, they are a habitual thing that we're doing. Can we change it? Yes. Is it easy? No, because it's like anything else we have to change. If you are in the habit of scarcity mentality, meaning you're not going to have enough, you're never going to get the house, I'm not going to be able to take the vacations I want. Look at everyone else on Instagram doing all the things I'm not going to ever be able to do. And if that is the overwhelming amount of thoughts that you're having, to me, it's an energetic flow, meaning that you're stopping the flow of the good things. But let me just put it in context for those who may not believe in some of the energetic flow or have witnessed it. I believe it because I witness it in people all the time. But think about it if I told you, all right, after we're done today or you're listening to this, start looking for red cars. You're going to get out there and all you're going to see is red cars everywhere. So if your brain is shut off to opportunity can walk right by your face for everything you ever wanted, and you're not going to see it because that's not part of your life. You're not worthy of that.
Yeah. Oh, I love this so much. And I agree. It is an energetic flow. And there's enough science around this. It's a combination of woo-woo and brain science and quantum physics. I mean, these are scientific things. These aren't pretend. So I love what you're saying, and I do I do think it's not easy to understand them all until, like you say, you open your mind and you start seeing some of the evidence of these things. You put something in your mind, you really want something, you don't know how in the world it's going to happen, you don't even believe it's going to happen. But, whether you're praying on it or doing affirmations about it or just visualizing it or whatever, it's fascinating how many things, come to be. And so, your belief system is your own belief system, but your thoughts are directing a lot of what's happening, and the energy around that, which is the emotional part. Your thoughts are creating feelings, and these habits you mentioned, those are just having the same thoughts over and over and over, until it becomes a habit. So I want to know more about your book. I want to know more about, how you address this, because for one thing, I love the title. I love any money book that has a relatable title that people, don't feel like it's too technical for me.
So I actually start the book by talking about exactly what we're talking about here, that how our thoughts and our feelings dictate our experience with money, meaning that we have fear and expectation and limitations that we've put on ourselves, that until we recognize what is that rumination around money and what we expect around money, it's very hard to move through and out of that. So I spend the first half of the book really talking about not only all of these habits and feelings, but some of the biases that we developed as well. There are a lot of bias out there. One of the biggest bias that I see all the time is I think something is right, so I go to ChatGPT or go to Google and I keep Googling it until it tells me that I'm right. So it's confirmation bias. And so there's a lot of ways of getting, having our bias confirmed. Many times we don't believe in our own ability to make decisions financially. So we go herd with everyone else and say, if everyone's buying this stock or that, then that's what must be right for me and what I want to do. Or if my parents or my community expect me to buy the house, get a nice car and have 2 children by the age I'm this age, even if that's on the line with what I want, that's what I'm going to do to be comfortable within my community. Because in the end, money is extremely primal. And that's what I talk about. So if somebody says, hey, Michelle, you're really successful. If I said that to you, if everyone else is in the room, like, wow, Michelle Perkins, wow, she's successful. Everyone in the room would think that you are financially successful without examining the quality of your life. Where most of us logically would say that success comes in a lot of different forms, and you really can't have success unless you have the quality of life that you want. Mm-hmm. But because we're primal human beings, we also want to be accepted, and we want to be admired and looked up to. And who do we write our books about? And who do we put up on screen? And we look at these people, captains of industry, and Sarah Blakely, who I love, by the way. She's an unbelievable entrepreneur, but she's got an incredible quality of life. If you look at some of her writing, some of the things that she does, so it's not that she's just made a lot of money, but she's living life on her own terms. And so I think she's incredibly successful, not just because she came up with this amazing idea for us women and with her Spanx brand, but we admire people, I think, for the wrong reasons. And it starts to limit, meaning we want money just to be admired, not to utilize it as a tool in our life. So the book starts by saying, here are all the reasons why you may not have a healthy relationship with money. And the second half says, here are the practical ways to get back to having a healthy relationship. And here are the basics. So I didn't write a how to manage your money book, which I could have, but there's so many out there, Michelle. You can get that everywhere. I really talked about, I think, the things that you do every day as a coach, because people wouldn't need a financial coach or a financial advisor if they didn't have some of these habits and bias and other things in their lives that cause them to fall short of what they really want. So many people accumulate, then look up and say, why does life feel so empty?
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is so good. And yes, I think, one of the early things that you should do is define what success is for you, because it's so different for everybody. And or it should be, really. I mean, you can
Should be.
copy what somebody else is doing and think that's success, but you're right. At the end of the day, you'll reach it and not feel any better than you did. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating that way. And we have built up money to be something more than it is. I mean, it is great. I'm not gonna I can pretend it's not,
No,
but
no, you
but
need
it's
enough. You need enough to, I mean, there's an extraordinary amount of people in this world on our earth that are living below the poverty line. And they just need to be able to eat and clothe themselves and put a roof over their heads. And yet many of us have choices with our money, discretionary money, and we're not making those choices in alignment with our values. And we're saying we can't do things. And yet the money is flowing through our hands. We're not making thoughtful decisions with that money. So if the most important thing for us is to help our kids with their college education, but we'll say, I can't afford to pay for college, and yet you have a home with a significant amount of equity in it. You can help your kids with the equity in your home if that's your number one goal. But if your number one goal is having that home with a lower mortgage, getting the home paid off so you can go into retirement, there's nothing wrong with that goal. Your kid can get a scholarship, loan, or grant, or get a job themselves. You don't have to pay for their education. But there's certain things in our society that we feel that we have to buy a home. We need to have a high paying, well, what does a high paying job mean? That typically is dictated by the community that you're in. I have to take X number of trips a year. I have to do this and should want to do that. And we spend so much time doing these things to meet the society norms. And then we see the things that we want. And we're like, well, I don't have enough money for that. Well, you did until you started spending it on things to impress, what do they say, people that, you shouldn't, because you're not doing it for you or for your desires.
yes, and it is money is so fascinating to me because for one thing, you're right, we're not paying enough attention. We're not making conscious spending decisions all the time. And you could argue that that's a big old burden if you have to think through every single time you spend $5 on a coffee, but which I don't actually believe in worrying about too much.
I agree.
But,
That $5 coffee thing, I don't like that analogy. It's
yeah.
like, you save your $5 on Starbucks and everything will be all right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's crazy. But money. There's so much fear around money, and I know my own fears around money that pop up all the time. I don't actually think just having money or not having money dictates the fear factor. I think it's there for everybody, for different reasons. And that's something that I think we all have to manage. And I mean, the key is just to be aware when you start telling yourselves, crazy things in the middle of the night, what is that? What's going on? But because I'll throw it back at you, you are an incredibly successful, smart woman who knows so much about finance and I'm sure is enjoying a wonderful life. Do you ever have your own fears around money?
All the time. Fear, the one thing that I will tell you that, and I wouldn't call it fear any longer, is I tease my kids. I'm of that generation where I don't have any tattoos, and yet a lot of the generations around me have tattoos. But I always tell my kids that if I get a tattoo, it's going to be noli timere, which means be not afraid in Latin, because I really think that fear is what stops us from most of the beautiful things in life. Fear of being loved, fear of making enough, fear of not having enough, fear of being accepted. There's a fear at the root of so many things. And there are no guarantees in this life, meaning you could have the best job and save plenty of money, and then something can happen that can change things in a heartbeat. And we as human beings, it's so easy because, again, back to primal, we want to protect and make sure that we have a house and clothes and food and we can take care of our family, that sometimes we hold on to money so tightly that we aren't even able to spend it or enjoy it. And I actually find that I have more conversations with people going into retirement of not letting go. learning to live with the fear. So do I said I had fear? Of course I do. I have concerns. I want to do certain things in my life. I have goals and things that I want to achieve. I have a practice. I want it to be successful. I want to be able to help my kids with college. And I am very human. So every once in a while, there's a fear that comes in, and I remind myself, nope, you plan for it. You're on track. If it doesn't go this way, you'll make a new decision based on your values, but I can't control it. And I think that's where we get in trouble, is we think we can control all outcomes, and that's not true. So we learn to live with the unknowing. Everybody wants certainty, and there is no certainty. And when you say there is no certainty, then people will say, then, I'm going to be in fear all the time. Well, you can choose to be afraid and move forward anyways. Meaning there's so many times in my life where I've been through so many different types of careers where I've always been in finance, but I went into leadership, and I had a leadership job running part of the United States and very secure income. And during 2008, when things were really, really ugly, I had a young child, a daughter, and I decided I did not want to be traveling all over the place. So I literally stepped off a financial cliff and walked away from a huge income right as the market is tanking. Yeah. And then purchased a practice to go back into private practice. And I remember coming home and telling my husband, well, I either just committed financial suicide or made the best decision of our lives, but it's in alignment with our values. And he goes, that's all we can do, is make the best decision we can with the information we have right now in alignment with our values. And that's how you walk through fear. Because if I had not made that decision and kept working in that position, it would have been, it was a phenomenal position. I was honored to have it, and I felt like I did it incredibly well, but I wouldn't have the time that I've had in the last 20 years with my daughter who's graduating from college next week. So that was outside of my values, and that alignment, as scary as it was terrifying. I mean, we could have lost our house over it, all kinds of things. It was so much in alignment with what was important to us, then I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, even afraid. I kept moving forward, and it's worked out beautifully.
Wow, that's a fantastic story. And I the values discussion is, I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you have that conversation with your clients, because it's so important, and I don't think most people do that on their own.
It's interesting actually managing people's money. And I love to manage money. I'm a portfolio manager on top of being a CFP, and I do comprehensive planning. So I'm really a nerd, and people walk in, we used to come in with all their papers, and now of course they probably email it to me most of the time in advance of the meeting. And so I put together all the numbers, and we're working on the planning. And typically when people come in, and they're new clients, and we haven't spoken about their money before. Most people come in with, I always say, like something sitting on their shoulders, like, okay, tell me I'm okay, or did I do well, or I did this, I still have a little bit of debt on the house, or they always come in, blah, 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 like, I've got this, well, take a look at my 401k is, I think it's doing pretty well, and I don't know, do I have enough to retire? All these questions in their mind. I will typically take the information and push it to the side for a moment. And it's really uncomfortable. You would think that they're like, and I said, we will absolutely get to that. Thank you for gathering all of this. I'm looking forward to taking a look at all of your investments and what you've done so far. Can we start with, typically as a couple, can you share with me what's important to you about money? And then come the crickets, like it's dead silent most of the time, like cricket, because it is, people have never allowed themselves to really think through that question. And I've literally had people say, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm doing really well. I've got over $1 million in my phone. I said, we'll get to that. What is that $1 million for? Meaning, what makes it meaningful? That's $1 million, but what makes that money meaningful? What are you going to do with it? And then they say, well, I want to retire. Awesome. Why is retirement important to you? And like, well, because everybody is going to retire. I'm like, no, a lot of people don't have an end game. So, as I start to dig into it and just start to ask questions, well, what have you always really wanted to do? I had a young couple that came in, and I talk about them in my book. And they were a tech couple, and they were mid-30s, late 30s, and they had done really well. They just bought a beautiful home, and they'd saved some money, and they came in excited. I was the first financial meeting, and I did this, push it aside, tell me what you want. And they looked at each other and said, well, we've been married for a few years, not really interested in having kids yet because we really want to travel. Meaning we're secure in our jobs now. We've been working like crazy. We really want to see a lot of the world before we have kids, knowing that'll slow us down for a few years. I'm like, awesome. What trips do you have booked this year? Where are you going? Do you backpack? What kind of trips do you do? And they said, well, we just bought a new house. We don't have anything planned right now. I'm like, why? And they said, well, we kind of stretch for the house. In our culture, that's expected that we buy as much house as we can. And so hopefully next year, if we get the raise or if we get this or that happens, then we'll be able to travel. And I said, well, if you just told me that was your number one goal. You didn't start with telling me having a house is your number one goal. And they said, well, no, we wanted a house. That was expected. I said, well, we used to call it being house poor, meaning that if you have a home that you are stretching for, I understand that's a worthy goal. But all I'm saying is if you're in that home and you can't do the things you really want to do right now in your time of life, we want to travel, why don't you downsize, create a little bit more income, stick some of that money away, and travel the next couple of years before you start having kids? And they both were dumbfounded, almost like I just told them they could do something they never would give themselves permission to do. And it was a tough conversation because they said, well, our parents are so proud of us. And I said, well, but you can't do what you want to do. Is that more important than what you want to do? So it's a lot of questions, Michelle. And then you start to get down. Ultimately, this couple sold the big house and downsized to a beautiful, smaller home. And they traveled for, it was probably 8 or 9 years before they started having kids. Time of their life. It was exactly what they wanted to do. They'll even tell you today, we even with our careers, we don't have the freedom that we had at that time. If we had lost that time, and they don't regret it for a second. But because they grew up in a home with a cultural background that said, this is what success looks like. You get straight A's, you go to an Ivy League, you buy the biggest house so we can tell all of our friends where you live and what your house looks like. That's successful. And they were living everyone else's story but their own until I met them. I always joke that their parents weren't happy with me. They're like, who is this Shannon Ryan woman? And but they ended up, and they have everything they want now financially and a home and everything else, but they didn't lose those years of travel that were so important to them. And now they just take the kids, they strap them on and go backpacking with the kids and do all kinds of cool things all over the world. But they created the life that they wanted for themselves. And in doing so, they found a profound level of money happiness that most of us never find without making some shifts.
Oof, I love that story. That's a fantastic example of where the values come in, and I feel like you can do both. You can live your values and you can also manage money properly. I don't think everybody does that. There are some people who, and I've had my own examples too, of, living by your values, but then sort of dropping the money management part. So I think somebody like you who can guide that whole process is really very important, because it's not easy to do all of this on our own without somebody looking over our shoulder and saying, well, you're doing this now, but you want to still keep doing something else.
Well, and that's why that's why what you're doing is so important, Michelle. I think when we first spoke, you're walking up and down in the apartment, was so powerful because we've experienced so many similarities with clients in our lives that what people understand that they need to manage their money. They don't understand they need to learn their emotional response to money to properly manage it. Because the other thing that happens is, hey, I'm going to do what I want to do. Like I'm going to line it. My value is to travel, and I'm going to travel, and I really don't want to work. I'm going to call in sick again, and I'm put everything on credit cards for now. I'm going to run myself into the ground financially, but I'm living the life I want to live. And they put themselves in such deep consumer debt that they look up at one day and they panic. at what have I done? And now they're living a life they don't want to live. So there's a balance here, meaning that it's what you value, you may not be able to do right this second. And if you run yourself into a hole, it may take getting a second job or a third job or selling your home or selling your car, something that you utilize as an expression of look at my wealth, but you couldn't afford. Maybe it's time to get rid of it, get your ducks in order. But once you've got a great foundation, meaning a cash reserve, a backup, you've got your consumer debt paid down and off, you have an income, meaning you've developed an ability to earn an income, and there's lots of ways of doing that. Then you're free to really roam, basically financially, and to make decisions on how you're going to spend money next. But I'm not speaking about an excuse to just do whatever you want and run yourselves in the ground, because I think that is, you talk about a sad way to live financially. You think it's free until it is not free.
Yeah, that is, I love that too, because a lot of the things that liberate us, we see as, trapping us. So budgets, for example, and, I don't even like that word. I think there are many ways to run that whole process. And you need to find, again, something that fits with your own personality.
Yep.
But that structure actually feels very freeing, because when you don't know what's going on,
Yes.
there's a stress, an underlying stress associated with that you can't really pinpoint, but it just keeps you in an anxious state all the time.
It's like not getting on the scale. I know this is a terrible example, but as a woman, you kind of know what you weigh. And I honestly, Michelle, if I don't get on my scale, and I'm not obsessive about my weight or anything, but if I don't get on the scale for a week or two, I know I'm avoiding the scale. And I weigh what I weigh, whether I get on that darn thing or not. And I know, coming off of Thanksgiving, my husband last night said, we're recording this right after Thanksgiving weekend. And my husband said, "Oh, have you jumped on the scale last night when we got home from the weekend?" I'm like, "Heck no, I'm doing that first thing in the morning." Because I have all the water weight tonight. So I got on my scale this morning, and I really didn't want to get on it because A is A. I did put a pound or two over Thanksgiving. I indulged. I had a great time. But it's the same thing with money. Even my own sister, Lisa, who is an amazing professional, incredibly intelligent, said to me once, "Shannon, ignorance is bliss." And I said, it is not bliss around your money when you're in control and you know what's coming in and going out. And she said that at a time where her husband was running a business. And he was getting frustrated, wanted her to be involved. I mean, he really is such a great guy. I want you to know what's going on. It'll help me if we can talk about it. And she's like, it's easier not to know. And the answer is, I think on a certain level, it is easier not to know. But in the end, it is very freeing to understand what's coming in and what's going out and what you have available to spend. And then learning to spend joyfully, meaning that when you know that you can afford to do it and you're not causing yourself more consumer debt, and it's something you really want to do, it's a whole different level of spending, meaning you can go buy the handbag, do what you really want to do. Don't need to hide it in your trunk from your spouse on the way home, meaning pull it out, enjoy the heck out of it, because you can afford to do it, and it was in alignment with what you wanted. And it is extremely frank. I don't use the word budgets either, because nobody likes the word budgets. Saying, I'm going to put you on a diet. If someone told me they would put me on a diet, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to be on a diet. So it's, we've got to be careful with our own language with ourselves as well.
Yes, 100%. That is so important. And I love everything you were saying. And one thing that came to me is we do kind of we get used to things. And then even though they're not what we want, we just know how it's all going to feel. And so we're not that uncomfortable with it. And one of those is overspending, kind of knowing we're overspending and feeling really uncomfortable and just sort of crossing our fingers, hoping that it's going to work out. And it's not a good habit, and we know that. But when you get used to that enough, you stop kind of trying to change it, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just so good to be aware of these things. And if you are on top of it, because then with what you were saying, you can get used to that feeling of joy. Like I can just do this and not have the anxiety and get used to that feeling, because we do get used to certain things. And it's important to understand that as well. When you're working with your investment clients, I mean, especially now, what kind of, how are you talking to them about everything going on? People are skittish right now about a lot of things. So,
So Michelle, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. I always like to hold my face up when I do that. But I've been doing this a long time, and there's always something to worry about. There is always something to worry about. You could take any year of any history and you could say, oh my gosh, computers are coming out. And I don't know about these dot coms. They're going to blow up everything. AI is going to take over and no one's going to have any jobs. Well, come on. When a buggy whip maker was making buggy whips around the turn of the century, when Ford was rolling off new cars, I'm sure the buggy whip maker was thinking, uh-oh, I'm out of a job and the whole industry's out of a job. There used to be entire rooms of people that calculated numbers because there was not calculators. That group is out of jobs as well. So we evolve. The one thing I hear a lot right now, not only around, hey, what's going to happen with AI and what's going to go, I mean, people being out of jobs. The other fear I have right now is we, at least here in the United States, are in such a polarized political situation right now, meaning that frustration and anger, whichever side of the aisle that you're on, this is not a political statement, there is stress, period, regardless of what side you're on. And sometimes all of that negativity will seep into our money, assuming that things are just going to be bad, meaning everyone's upset at each other. The market's up today, that's good, but the market's down tomorrow, it's bad. Over time, being in a balanced portfolio, and I really do thinking having somebody with you that can coach and help you. I can't tell you how many times, even over just this last year, I've had clients say, I don't know, Shannon, I just read something that it's all going to go down. Remember confirmation bias? So they got to confirm that everything is going to pop. And we as humans always, we want to be ahead of it. We want to think we got the early tip off. And so we're going to get out before everybody else does. Yeah. Really over time, it's money is pretty basic, meaning you pick your portfolio, your balance, your risk based on what you can handle on that. I call it a roller coaster. I always say we're strapping into a roller coaster. You can throw up on my shoes, you can be scared, but you can't jump out of the cart at the wrong time because then you're going to go splat. So you have short-term money for the things you need in the next 3 to 5 years. You have interim, midterm, and you have long-term money. And you take the appropriate amount of risk and you rebalance it and you watch what sectors you're in and you let it ride. And that's how wealth is made over time. Much easier said than done. But if it's done well, over time, if you've stayed in and you're working with somebody that you trust, you also get used to the roller coaster ride. Even on the downside, 22 was the most recent time if you have investments that you were like, oh my gosh, we're down 18, 19, 25%. And if you had a lot of tech that was down 37% in 22, you had a big down. But what's happened in 23, 24, and 25? So if you jumped out of the roller coaster ride at the wrong time, you would have missed great returns. But again, that comes into a very emotional thing. People can get on their computer and log into their 401k or their investment account every day and make themselves crazy. So coaches like yourself, having a great financial advisor, all of this makes a difference. In fact, statistically, if people have coaches, I have an executive coach. I mean, I don't know how you not have a coach or an advisor in your life for the different things that are important because they pay for themselves during some of this volatile times.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You need that person to be a sounding board and to bounce ideas off and to get their perspective. Everything's perspective. And you're right, people, depending on what you're looking at and watching and who you're following, your perspective gets shifted around. So, I think this is fascinating and it's very calming actually to hear that there's this process that and it's not that complicated, it's fairly simple and which always makes me think of younger people like our kids, and how easy they can make their lives if they start earlier than many of us did. So I don't know how you convince them. I mean, my kids, they're paying some attention, but they're also big spenders. But I don't know. What would you say to people a little on the younger side?
So my first couple of books were children's books. So I really worked with children in financial literacy and helping parents raise financially literate kids. And that did also start with the mindset around things. But I have two girls that are in their early 20s, and one is graduating in 3 weeks from her undergrad. And so we're having a lot of these conversations. And what I say to my children is keep it simple, don't overcomplicate it. Stay out of consumer debt, number one, because the cost of consumer debt, in fact, a quick side story. We were over in Target when my daughter who's graduating was 6 or 7 years old, and we were coming out of Target. And I've always talked about when I swipe a card, is this free? And they even now as adults, I'm like, is this free? And they'll start laughing, Mom. And so we got in the car, and she was in the back seat still, so I know she was pretty young. And I heard this little voice go, Mom, do we have enough money to pay for that credit card charge you just made? And I said, we do. It's our value. I use it as a charge card, convenience. We get points on it and we pay our credit cards off every single month. It's one of our family values. And I wouldn't put it on there if we didn't have enough money to buy it. I just bought her some underwear and some cute t-shirts. I said, I would not have done it if we did not have the money and that wasn't in our budget this month. She goes, oh, good. I want to go to the movies and get ice cream. And if we have to pay interest rate charges, we won't have leftover money to do those things. I almost started crying, Michelle. I'm in the front seat thinking, she gets it at like 6. And so what happens is that getting in consumer debt early on, and sometimes this is a lot of student loans as well, meaning we have students are ending up in universities. And for a long time there was this belief that if you just get the best education you could, and even if it was $100,000 a year for undergrad, just go into loans, you'll get it paid back later. And that has come back to really limit a lot of people early in their careers because they are just laden with loans. So debt is a huge deal. The other piece of it that I tell my girls is you'll never regret having a little cash reserve. Now, I have one daughter her cash reserves burns a hole in her pocket pretty bad. She's a normal girl. Right. And another daughter who likes to see the money in the reserve. So she needs to learn to spend a little bit. But there's always going to be something that comes up, and it's not always an emergency. The car needs new tires, the refrigerator breaks, or it could also be, hey, your girlfriends are heading to Europe for a week and you want to go and you want to have the money to do it. So having those reserves, it also means that if you're in a job, especially like a first job that you don't like, you aren't stuck, meaning that you have a few months to make a transition if you want. So often we make huge life decisions, staying in bad marriages, staying in bad jobs, and other things because we're frightened financially. If you've got your debt paid off and you've got a cash reserve, as I said earlier, you're kind of free to roam. Now you can build your life. You can choose all the other things, but living within your means, it makes an incredible difference mentally. And it sounds boring, but it is one of the most freeing things that you can do for yourself.
Yes, that's such a beautiful way to wrap up. And I think I used to think it sounded boring. Now I look back at my grandfather saying it's not what you make, it's what you keep, and all these old things that people said to me that didn't land as well as I wish they had. And it's true. And it's not boring at all when you are older and you look back and you realize, all the vacations you took, or that your ability to just go to the market and not think about what you're buying. I mean, just buy it.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It's huge. And I love that. And I hope people will take that in, because the earlier you start, the better. And because life will hit you with some changes too. So you can't predict what's coming down the road, but you can safeguard yourself to an extent.
You will lose a job, possibly. Yeah. You will have an unexpected financial crisis almost every month. It won't be necessarily a big one, but small ones. Expect the unexpected. The only thing is certain is uncertainty, the certainty of uncertainty. And I'm not saying live in fear. Just be prepared. Just know that, and uncertainty isn't always bad uncertainty, but that's the only certainty we have is uncertainty.
Yes, and it's so true. And when I hear people say, which I do sometimes, these things always happen to me. No matter what I do, something happens to me. And it's like, well, it kind of happens to everybody, actually. It's sort of how you react to it and what you do with that. But the expectation that things are going to happen is a good one to have.
Yeah, yeah. And it's again that energetic flow. It's things are going to happen to everyone. And it's again, you said it a couple times, Michelle, and I think it's really profound is how we respond. Is our emotional response to what happens, it actually equals our experience of that, meaning that it's not necessarily bad. Making a mistake
Yeah.
or having something happen can be some of the greatest, losing a job can be some of the greatest lessons that any of us learn. Or we weren't going to walk away. And so we lost a job because we weren't happy there. And
Right.
then put us right where we were supposed to be. That's not bad. That ultimately is good. It can be bad though if you don't have anything to fall back on for a couple months. So that's where it's our response. And you've said it a couple times, and I just think that it's a really important message.
Well, here we are at the close to the top of the hour, and I could still talk to you for another 5 hours here. So I'm just so happy to know you and to know that you're out there. And I love what you're doing. And I think you're doing it with so much, intelligence and expertise, but also heart and understanding of human nature, which I think makes you really stand out in the world that you're in. And so thank you for everything you're doing. And it's my pleasure to have you on and to have had a couple of conversations with you. I'm hoping there'll be more in the future. So your Money Has Feelings. That's your book. You have a TED Talk, the name of which will be in the show notes. and,
I need to go look that up.
and you have a practice in Manhattan Beach, California.
I do.
So do you want to tell people how to find you?
The easiest way is on my website, shannon-ryan.com. And what fun, Michelle. I knew this was going to be fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Really made my day. And yeah, so. All right. And audience, thank you so much for being here. Please share this show with somebody that you know who needs it. I know you can think of some people who will really benefit from listening to what Shannon had to say and knowing about her. And yeah, so please rate, review, share the show. And you can find me at Michelle@limitfreelife.com and go to limitfreelife.com and sign up for my newsletter and see what we have going on over there. So thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you as well. So if you have comments about the show or you want to know more, please reach out to Shannon. And yeah, so thank you so much. We'll see you next week.